So everybody, welcome. We're really glad that you're able to join us this evening. This is the second conversation in a series of broadband conversations that the Fox Island Broadband Task Force is holding for its community broadband campaign. The goal of our campaign is to share broadband information, education, and various broadband options with the community. And our goal is to build consensus and select and fund a universal broadband option for Vinyl Haven. So on December 3rd, we launched the broadband campaign with a presentation of our 2020 broadband report, which provides a high-level look at Vinyl Haven's options for universal broadband. Tonight's conversation will look at the benefits and the challenges of one community's way to deliver universal broadband, and that is a public-private partnership between the town of Long Island and Consolidated Communications. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Gabe McPhail. I work with the town in the Planning and Community Development Office, where I facilitate committee and town projects. And I'm joined tonight behind the scenes by my colleague, Matt Jablonski, who is our Island Fellow, currently working for the town of Vinyl Haven. Before we get started, I would like to remind everybody who's joining us in the Zoom room just of a few Zoom etiquette tips and guidelines. So first, hopefully we all know this by now, but stay on mute unless you're speaking. Please try to keep your video off if there's something distracting going on around you or if you're doing something distracting. And if you would like, you can rename your Zoom name to whatever you want people to identify with, whatever name you want people to use, or however you want to identify yourself. Feel free to add any other relevant information, such as affiliation or pronouns. One of the things we usually note in these meetings is that we are aware of the irony that this meeting about fast, reliable internet is taking place in most networks where they're neither fast nor reliable. So we encourage you, if you lose your connection, your video connection, and you want to call in, we do have a Zoom phone number, so you can call into the Zoom meeting, and Matt will be posting that call-in number and the meeting ID both in the Zoom chat and in the Facebook comments. So if you have any Zoom issues tonight when you're in the Zoom room, you can message Matt in the chat. He's also going to provide his email in the chat, and you can email him if you have an issue with Zoom, and Matt will do his best to try to help you out. The other thing we'd like to ask is that you really take advantage of the Zoom chat to post your questions throughout the conversation, and likewise for the Facebook comments. Please use the comments to post your questions, and we're going to collect those questions throughout the presentation and conversation, and also at the end for when we have our Q&A. Once we get to the Q&A portion of the meeting, we're going to take the questions that have been written first, but we will also save time at the end for folks joining by phone, or if anyone has a question that they weren't able to put in the chat, we will take questions verbally. So one last thing, we're going to try not to use jargon tonight. If we use jargon, meaning broadband jargon, we'll do our best to explain what we're saying. However, thanks to Janann, we have a shiny new broadband glossary that is available on the town website Matt's going to put a link for the broadband glossary both in the chat and the Facebook comments. So feel free to click on that so you can have access to the PDF broadband glossary. If there's a term that comes up, you'll be able to look it up. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce both Janann Sherman and Mark Greene, who will be sharing information with us tonight through our conversation number 2. So for those of you who don't know Janann, she's a retired history professor from Tennessee. She settled on the island in 2013, and a couple years later, she joined the Fox Island Broadband Task Force. And her goal was really to help the task force assess current and future broadband needs and options for our community. Janann serves as the Fox Island Broadband Task Force Chair. Mark Greene, who's joining us from Long Island, is a former high school teacher. He's lived on and off Long Island all his life as a seasonal resident for work, business, and family reasons, and full-time for the past 20 years or so. He's currently semi-retired, whatever we want to call semi-retired, and wears multiple hats for town government, and he caretakes multiple residents in the off-season. He's chaired the Long Island Broadband Exploratory Committee since 2015. And I think joining us tonight, we also have some members of our broadband committee, and I'm just gonna double check and see who might be with us from our broadband committee other than Janann. I don't see anybody yet. I also don't see Andy Dorr, who's our town manager, but if Andy does join and anyone has any specific questions for Andy, you can put them in the chat and we will direct them to Andy at the Q&A time of the presentation / conversation / evening. Great. I'm going to give a quick overview of how the evening will go. So I'm going to do a super quick background on our broadband journey here on Vinyl Haven. We're going to launch into our conversation with Janann and Mark. We like to always put in a plug for the broadband speed test project through the Maine Broadband Coalition. So we'll do that right toward the end before our Q&A. Share with you a few of our next steps and sort of where we are in this broadband campaign, and hopefully leave plenty of time for that Q&A at the end. So I'm going to give you just a super quick background on our broadband task force. You probably, if you've joined us before, know by now we have a 9-member broadband committee. The mission of the committee is to support the town in its efforts to pursue a broadband solution for Vinyl Haven that provides affordable, accessible, future-proof internet speeds to everyone in the community. So the work that the committee has done and the studies that we've conducted and the feedback that the committee has received has led to these being the primary goals for broadband on Vinyl Haven. So you'll see ranging education, economic development, telemedicine. There's other things in here, equal access, so everyone having the same level of service no matter where they're located on the island. Speed, reliability, future-proof technology, and symmetrical service. So the same speeds for download that you would have for upload. So as you know, if you've been with us for these conversations, the work that the committee did landed us in 2019 to do a deeper dive into understanding the cost to build out our own broadband network for Vinyl Haven. That information is presented in our 2020 broadband report, Vinyl Haven Internet Planning document. If you haven't had a chance to look at that document, we strongly encourage you to do so. You can access it by going to the town website, townofvinylhaven.org. In news and announcements, you'll see join the broadband conversation. That will provide you in that content that you click on, you'll see a link for the broadband report, and that will enable you to download the PDF. So where we are right now in the campaign is really to provide you with outreach, education. We are going to be doing some digital literacy training and providing the community with access to that. We want to assure that we all share the same values when it comes to broadband, and we want that to lead us to making a decision around what solution we want to commit to. And of course, simultaneously, we're working behind the scenes to be able to fund whatever broadband infrastructure we will land on. So I think to set the stage for our conversation tonight, it would be good to share just some quick information about Long Island. So for those of you who don't know, Long is in Cumberland County, Casco Bay. It's not too far from Portland, I think a 45-minute ferry ride. Long's year-round population is 2,000, sorry, Mark, 215. And that jumps to about 1,000 in the summer. Similar to Vinyl Haven, primary industries are fishery, tourism, and construction. And as you'll see from tonight's conversation and what we've already shared with you, is that Long is working with Consolidated Communications, CCI, to provide broadband to their community, fiber to the home, high-speed internet through a public-private partnership. So with that, I'm going to jump off these slides and I'm going to turn it over to Janann to begin our conversation with Mark Greene of Long Island. Thank you, Janann.
There we go. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for joining us. It's been really helpful, and I've found so much instructive about the story of what you're doing on Long Island. So let's just start out with you telling me what inspired your community to decide you need to do something. What kind of coverage did you have? What was the situation on the island?
Well, thank you. This is like a big night out, having this many people in front of me here. Yeah, I mean, our story is so similar to yours, starting in 2015. But before that, we had Fairpoint, and before that we had Verizon. And, in one sense, for the everyday person who wasn't too deep into this, they were providing, we moved from dial-up service to DSL fairly early in the game. So, it was about a 10-year period there where nothing seemed too serious. But we were hearing more and more about folks who wanted to be on the island or return to the island, but they couldn't do it with the internet speeds that were here. So in 2015, we also were part of the Tilson study. We attended the Island Institute Broadband Conference in Rockport, and conferences that came after that. And the whole impetus, at least in the beginning, that got me really interested was, our strong dependence on fisheries, mostly lobster, and the whole idea of being able to expand economic opportunities for the future of the island. Now, Long Island is small compared to you guys. And we've long had a worry, like a lot of the other islands, of losing population and dwindling school numbers and, becoming one more summer island like so many have. So this was serious stuff, and we were very interested. So following that, myself and two others, and later one more, asked if we could form a broadband committee. Well, no Board of Selectmen ever says no to that. And we became a subcommittee of the selectmen just to give us a little, I guess, weight in the world. So over the last 5 years until now, we actually worked pretty hard. It was a diverse 3 people besides myself, very different ways of doing things. We poured over every word we wrote, but we put out several reports to the community over the years, a couple of surveys, and eventually, I think it was in 2018, the Island Institute, with some grant money, helped us and Shebig and Cliff Island to do an RFP done by Mark Greene of course, Axiom. So that was the first time we had some real numbers. Other estimates we've gotten from companies that weren't interested in us at all were like $1.5 million just off the wall. So we ended up with roughly $1 million estimate to do our 12 miles of road and, you know, an independent system. So, and again, we spoke with everybody. Of course, Fairpoint, the cable companies on the mainland, Red Zone, nobody had any interest in this little place. So we were working with goals that are almost exactly the same as yours. Number one, any solution must be available to all residents. Number two, it needs to be affordable or at a reasonable cost. And number three, it must be future-proof. So once we had that RFP, you know, we did all kinds of scenarios about, you know, how much it would cost if it was totally tax supported, how much it would cost if it was subscriber supported. We had our eyeballs on Islesboro and what they were doing up there and the balance they were working out and so forth. So the beginning of 2019, I mean, we had done everything we could and we really weren't feeling the love so far as response to, you know, our proposals. So we said, okay, there's the stuff. If someone wants to pick this up and run with it, it's all there. Well, late that same year, the selectmen called us in and said, you know, people are complaining they cannot get DSL hookups right now, which turned out to be true. There was no more capacity. Now, Consolidated did address that in time, but you know, nothing like a shortage to get people all interested. So they said, can you take another look at this? So we say, you know, give us a couple $100. We'll get another survey out. We believe in first class mail to everybody. And we did. And we did a lot of publicity on the survey and we sent out 350. That's how many, you know, households there are, year-round, seasonal, whatever. And we got over 200 back, which was really good. And
That's
they were
really great.
the big question we asked at the end was, what are you willing to pay to have high-speed internet? Come on here. Will you pay the same? Will you pay more or what? And it was overwhelming. People were willing to pay at least the same, and most were willing to pay more, either because they wanted it or they felt it was good for the community. That was quite a change from the usual, well, what we have is good enough, that we've all listened to for,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
5 years here. So, okay, at that same, so okay, we got that. All right, let's crank up. Let's call everybody again, Red Zone and, you know, Verizon, anybody that'll pick up the phone. Again, nobody wanted us except almost on a lark. Let's call, I want to say Fairpoint, but CCI, you know, who had told us point blank 5 years ago, We did. And we got the same person, Jeff MacGyver, that we had met with in Portland 5 years ago. And he said, yeah, we'd love to talk about it. And we said, okay, when can we come in? We'll come out. I mean, shocking. So, you know, a couple weeks later, with a pot of fish chowder, the 4 of us at Town Hall early in January, they came out and laid out this proposal where if we'd borrow the money, they'd build the system and they'd pay the loan. was, you know, was the heart and soul of the whole thing. Well,
Right.
we were dumbfounded. So kind of went from there. I mean, we were
Well,
already,
CCI
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. CCI then was willing to build a fiber network. They weren't just wanting you to sign up for something maybe a little bit faster
No,
on
this
DSL.
was the fiber of the whole island, every
Yeah.
house on the island. Yeah. So with gigabit service up and down, symmetrical. So we were all over it. So again, the budget process was already underway, but you know, we brought it to the selectmen, we brought it to the finance committee. Everybody was on board that we'd fast track this for the budget hearings in March and town meeting in May. And town meeting didn't happen till June because of COVID, but it passed unanimously, save one, and we had our funding. So
I understand that CCI has built some systems in New Hampshire where they've done the same thing.
correct.
Basically, the town provides them with the capital to do the build out, and then they'll eventually pay off the loan. So the town has the access to the funds.
Right.
So what did it end up costing? I mean, what you
Well,
had said that you got an estimate of $1 million at one point.
yeah,
What
well,
did it end up being with CCI?
you know, I'm sorry Andy Dorr isn't here at this moment because he's heard me rant and rave at Island Coalition meetings before about CCI ought to be able to do this for half the cost of what it's cost to do it ourselves. Turned out to be true. So our cost, the Long Island part, which puts the fiber on all the poles, the core system, $519,000. CCI's, they call it a contribution, is to hook up from the pole into the home. So they own that part of it, we own the core. And they claim their cost is going to be $161,000.
So you basically own the backbone, as they call it.
That is correct.
And then they are doing the hookups, the attachments from that backbone to all the individual.
Right. Yep.
And so you needed to borrow 500 and what did you say, $17,000?
$519,000. Yep.
19. How did that go?
That actually has been more challenging than we thought. The normal thing, you go to the main bond bank, and there's another thing coming up in about 2 weeks, I guess, for that. The problem with this is it is not a tax-free situation, which the main bond bank specializes in. They have something like 5% every year of, I don't know what they call it, bad money or something negative that they can work with, but that's not guaranteed to us. So we may yet go there, but and then you got the whole grant thing. It gets complicated quick with the money. Whatever you borrow from the main bond bank, you're going to pay for 20 years. Doesn't matter if you get a $100,000 grant the week after you take out the loan. So there's all these kinds of borrowing things. A couple of banks turned us down. Our own bank, which we do $1.5 million of business a year with, hemmed and hawed, and finally said, well, okay, but they gave us a very high interest rate. So we do have a pending loan if we follow through on it for 4.21%, but that kind of drove up the cost of this thing more than we were anticipating.
Well, and there's so many moving parts on these things. I mean, you think you got one thing figured out and then something else comes up.
Right.
I do want to talk about a little bit about the arrangement that you made with Consolidated.
Yep.
You say they own the backbone and you own the connections.
No,
or vice versa.
The other way around. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering what kind of agreement you had to make. In other words, does the town get to say about what this is going to cost the consumer? What level of service they're going to have and so forth? Or is that Consolidated's decisions?
Well, in the contract, the cost of the service, depending on what level you choose 50 over 50, 100 over 100 gigabit. The cost of the monthly service will never be higher here than it is anywhere else in Consolidated's main territory. So there's not going to be any island premium cost to this. So that's good.
Yeah, you bet that's good.
It's not cheap, but it's good. So
Yeah, having the backbone gives you a little bit of leverage. Then supposing you just don't like the way they're treating you, or they go bankrupt, what then? What has the town got for infrastructure?
First of all, we will own the backbone, from day one. They will maintain it, which is fine. Where was I going with that? If they go bankrupt or something. So in the contract, if the condition of service or anything about the way it's being run is unsatisfactory, in our opinion, they have 30 days to cure that, or, drastically, we can foreclose on the whole system. So, that came up a lot. What if, nobody has a great warm fuzzy feeling about Fairpoint. And most people think CCI is just Fairpoint.
Yeah,
but
me too.
But, number one, they cannot go out of business. It's a public utility. They certainly, as Fairpoint showed us, can go into some sort of Chapter 11 or bankruptcy proceedings or whatever. But they have to come out. They have to have a plan to come out and maintain service all the time, or sell themselves to somebody. So, who knows what can happen in this day and age. But, on the face of it, they're going bankrupt is not one of our worries. And, if they fold it up tomorrow, contrary to what I just said, we still own the system, which we can sell to someone, we can run ourselves. We've got the hardware. They cannot repossess this like a car.
Yeah, that's right.
So, at least from that point of view, and again, a lot of people asked about that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they have a PR problem as well, which they inherited from Fairpoint. And so my next question then is, what about the naysayers in the community? I mean, it sounds like it all went smoothly, but I know better.
And
Things like this never go smoothly.
well, until this CCI thing came along, we didn't feel comfortable showing up at town meeting to borrow $1 million to build this thing, because again, like I said, what we have is good enough, or do we really want to attract more people here, and all stuff like that.
I know.
And nobody wants the taxes to go up. We're famous for keeping taxes low here. And it would have added, if we did the whole thing ourselves, taxpayer funded, would have landed about 40 cents on the mill rate, which our mill rate's about $7.75. So you can look at it two ways. I would look at it, okay, so what? Others don't feel quite that way, as you can imagine. So, I mean, we never had a huge debate over this because we never brought it forth to town meeting. We did not get a lot of love at the finance committee for a couple of years as we started to think about bringing it forth. So, the heck with it. We just didn't. I don't know if I hit the question there. Oh, naysayers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, never got to that point. This consolidated thing, it wasn't 3, 4, well, maybe a month later after we were working on this and looking at bringing it forth this year to town meeting, that, of course, the coronavirus came along. And so that suddenly people realized what we were doing here. But even before that, I mean, the finance committee, which normally throws me out every time they see me coming, they know I'm looking for something. So, but not this time, because it had no impact on the taxes. Obviously, the town had to borrow the money, things you're saying about going bankrupt, da, 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 da. But hey, if it doesn't touch the taxes, maybe Greene's got something here. So I really didn't get any blowback at all.
Yeah, it sounds like the arrangement, the
Yeah,
fact that you're owning all that infrastructure, it's kind of a win-win
Right.
for both the town and for them.
I think so now. You know, I've got some cranky sides to me about how fast this is going and a few conditions, but yeah, just need to back up, and it is not a bad thing at all. I mean, I just can't see that we'd have spent, well, I don't know with the whole, you know, virus thing right now, what we'd have done. But yeah, that made it pretty smooth. And if you don't like it, don't take it. You can keep your old DSL forever.
Yeah, you're not forcing anybody to get on board.
This is optional.
So there isn't any sort of agreement about take rate and so forth. We keep hearing take rate. You have to have so many people sign up or it's not going to be a paying proposition.
Well, that is interesting because the whole contract right now has been held up for 6 weeks, I believe, over this whole subscriber fee, infrastructure fee. It's got about 6 names in the contract there, but it is essentially a tag-on fee. In New Hampshire, it ran between $10 and $15, and that was supposed to be up for us too. It's actually gone up to about 18. That's on top of your subscribe, you know, your service, your monthly service. So you pay that every month. And that money times the number of subscribers needs to come close to the mortgage payment every month on the town's loan. So,
right.
So
but what if it doesn't?
Yeah, well, every 2 years in the contract, there's a renegotiation of this fee, you know, that sees how close we are. If we have more subscribers than the mortgage payment, you know, times the fee, then the mortgage payment, the fee comes down. Of course, there's another side to that. So this is a small place. We need, you know, at $15, we needed 200 subscribers to sort of hit that $3,200 mortgage that we're facing with this 4.21% loan. So
yeah, that's a really high percentage.
so there's a delicate dance here, and the higher that fee is, the fewer subscribers you might get. The fewer subscribers you might get. You can finish my thought here.
Right, exactly. It's all connected together.
So I've got some new thoughts on that I just touched with the finance committee. I'll get to that later on. But yeah, so that's a sticky wicket. If you had a bigger place.
So you're not quite at that point where they're ready to start building.
No, I thought we'd be building by now. Again, the longer you think about some of these things, in some ways it's better. In some ways, it's just, we should have been building now. But yeah, I mean, the way we worded the town meeting article was to borrow up to a little more than that, but call it $519,000. But there was no deal until the select board was satisfied with the contract and the terms, which is a good thing, because we were nowhere near ready, you know, with the contract at that time. And we were real tight on time to get this to this past town meeting. So that was fine with me. So, you know, hey, we could walk away from this thing tomorrow if we want. We don't have any skin in the game at this moment, except a lot of time. But I mean, we're not going to do that. Nobody's thinking of that. But
right.
We need to get this settled here.
So if you had to do this over again, would you go do the same thing? Or what would you do differently?
I knew damn well when I went to that conference in Rockport reluctantly that I was getting into another massive project. So what would I do? Let me think. No, you mean more recently?
Yeah, I think more in terms of your community deciding to go this way.
Yeah, we probably should have a help group for chairman of broadband committees. The big thing I'd have done, I would have done, Well, we didn't know about this. If we'd have known in May, I think we're the first one in Maine, really. Consolidated's done some partial expansions in some communities, but this is the first whole, entire one of these being done. So they're treading carefully, because whatever we get for a contract, the next town's going to get the same contract, I'm telling you.
Exactly. They don't want to give away the farm.
Well, yeah, and I get it. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, I wish we'd have started earlier, but we didn't necessarily know. It's just one of those things. I'm glad we picked up the phone and called them back again.
Well, yeah, it sounds like it was like the perfect storm. They were looking for an investment opportunity, and you were looking to get some broadband at a price you could afford.
Well, times have changed too. I mean, they've got to see the handwriting on the wall. I mean, they saw what happened up in Islesboro. They went from having basically all the service to having none of it. So you got all that infrastructure there. You can either make money and work with what the people want. I may get carried away here, or lose it all. So we're capable of doing anything here. Hey, we created a new town 30 years ago. We know how to do stuff if we have to. You guys do too, but I'm just saying.
That's right. Know how to negotiate.
Well, know how to get mad and get things done.
Yeah, well, there's that too.
So I gotta say, and I just added this today really to my thinking, and with some conversations with the finance chair. This infrastructure fee at $18 a month is going to cost any subscriber, year-round or seasonal, whether they turn it off for half the year or not, $216 a year. Okay, for 20 years. If we funded this thing with our own tax money, the $519,000 part of this, and again, I wanted to get this right, it would cost a $300,000 home $60 a year. And
so yeah, you don't call it taxes, but that's the very thing it is.
This may not be such a good deal after all. I'm not talking Consolidated, but look, getting anything through town meeting when it's got the T word attached to it is tough. Okay.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I'm ahead of the selectmen meeting tomorrow night, so I hope they're not listening in. But I think we got to look at this. We keep what we have. Fairpoint's already told, or Consolidated's already told us, it doesn't look like this is going to happen construction till the end of this year, because they want to know what the grant is going to be, whether we're going to be able to, we know we can borrow one, or we're going to try for the bond bank, and they want all one number forever locked in the contract. Well, I don't like but anyways, so I'm just half thinking we ought to look at this.
Yeah, that's a place to negotiate.
Well, if we just hand them the check tomorrow, 50% check, they're obligated in 30 days to start building this thing by contract. So, I'm just saying, I'm doing some research.
Well, we'll be looking forward to an update to see how this plays out. How are we doing on time? I think, is there anything else you want to tell us that I didn't ask for?
I can't believe someone doesn't want to know what these new internet speeds are going to cost.
All right.
Some sample offerings, 15 over 15. Now this includes a $10. I should just remove the infrastructure fee.
Yeah, keep that fee off to the side.
Okay, that's easy. Okay, 15 over 15 will be $52.75. 50 over 50 will be $63. 100 over 100, $85. 1,000 over 1,000, 1 gigabyte over 198. No, I'm sorry. I haven't removed the $10, $88. So, wow, that's a lot of money. Well, first of all, this is not an add-on. You're getting rid of what you have now, which is probably
Exactly.
anywhere from $30 to $50 a month. But the other thing, number one, it's everywhere. The reliability has got to be better. It's a new system. It's fiber. You don't share your fiber with anybody else's. You understand what symmetrical is.
Exactly.
There's no data caps, no throttling of data, which are all problems if you're using your phone hotspot or satellite
Yeah.
or anything else.
Anything else. That's exactly right.
And another thing we kept getting was 5G's coming. Hey, pick up you guys have cell phone coverage by what I understand, but pick up your cell phone. You can hardly get a call in many parts of the island. I said, how do you like your cell phone coverage now? Oh, it's awful. Well, it ain't going to be any better with 5G. 5G is not coming to Long Island, might come to downtown Portland. So,
Yeah, exactly.
all these things, and everybody's out on the satellite. There's 1,000 satellites up there. Well, you're not going to have the speed, and you got the right locations, and it may be good, but this is the one thing I'm not talking.
Yeah, there's no competition.
I'm preaching to the choir here. Fiber is the thing. Whatever comes along, we're comfortable with fiber. It will work no matter what comes along. Now,
And it'll work far into the future.
Yeah, you always got to worry about being outcompeted, I suppose, and and losing customers, and back to the subscriber fee, which begins to make my tax proposal look a little stronger. But yeah, so the other thing that comes with this, now you already have cable in some parts of town, but everybody out here, I don't, a lot of us have gone back to antennas because, you get your stuff off the internet. But, CCI has a complete TV package that's price-wise looks very competitive to, the satellite packages and your cable packages. So the potential exists. I wouldn't sell it on this until I had it in writing, but the potential on this is that there could be some real savings for people who want, all that 100 channels of nothing.
Yeah, and when you have high-speed internet, you can get rid of the satellite and the cable company and stream now, especially in recent years, streaming things are the way to go. You don't pay for 300 channels you never watch.
Right.
Plus,
So
you can make all your phone calls through the high-speed internet. You don't have to have a cable company.
Everybody's going to be different on what works for them, what they might save, what they might keep. They may want the 100 channels, who knows? But it certainly will give a lot more competition, for people. So,
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
Well, thank you very much. This
My
has
pleasure.
really been informative. I hope that our listeners have come up with a lot of questions.
Okay.
So I think I'll turn it back over to Gabe and prepare yourself for some questions from somebody other than me. Thanks a lot, Mark.
Thank you both. Thanks, Janann, and thank you so much, Mark. We really appreciate all of the information, and just it's great to hear your story and yeah, just learn about what you've gone through and what is yet to come. So I'm going to do a quick screen share again before we jump to Q&A. I want to sort of do my usual here, which is to remind everybody about the Maine Broadband Coalition broadband speed test. So this is a project to map actual internet speeds across the state of Maine. And we feel like this is a really important project because the providers will essentially tell the Connect Maine Authority they'll report what the speeds are where. And if you look at that map, it will show a different picture than what folks are actually getting when they do a speed test. So you might be sold a certain speed, but that's not necessarily the speed you're getting. That area where you live might be, according to the provider, able to get certain speeds, but is that actually what you're getting? So it really helps to create a clear picture of what broadband speeds are across the state. And we would love to have strong participation from Vinyl Haven so we can truly understand through our own mapping, our own GIS mapping, what the current broadband slash not broadband, what the current internet picture looks like on the island. So Matt is going to put a link in the chat and in the Facebook comments that is the direct link to the page you would go to at the Maine Broadband Coalition website. It'll provide information about the speed test project. And if you scroll down, you can actually just click on a button and that will take you to the speed test. You enter in a little bit of information, hit submit, and your speeds will get logged. So we strongly encourage you to take the test. We're promoting the link, share the link with others if you can, and get as many people as you can to take the speed test. So finally, before we jump to our Q&A, just to give you a sense again of where we're hoping to go in our broadband campaign, and essentially for broadband on Vinyl Haven, similar to the story that Mark shared, we've been, the town has been working on this. The Fox Island Broadband Coalition has been working on this since 2015. And because we've had and have two relatively strong incumbents, particularly in the Spectrum area, folks with Spectrum service are mostly satisfied with what they're getting. There hasn't been a whole lot of interest in doing this other than in areas where there is no coverage. So, or underserved areas of the island, which is a large geographic area. But when we look at where Spectrum is providing coverage, it's in the highly populated area of the south end of the island. So we really feel like the time is now, just as Mark said, and the whole nation is seeing this, just needing to have broadband to work from home, to go to school from home, and all of the other goals that we mentioned early on. So we see that essentially there's two options for Vinyl Haven, two directions to go in. If we want to achieve a fiber to the premise broadband network on the island. So that's building and owning our own system, or having some sort of partnership with an incumbent, or with perhaps another entity of sorts that would enable us to get this job done. So our goal really, again, is to gauge with the community what folks really want. Is it just bottom line price tag? Is it, the monthly rate that people are going to be paying that's most important? Or is it sort of everything together? And we did a little poll last time that gave us an indication that things like universal coverage were really important. Equity was really important. So while we know the bottom line is always, at the end of the day, what is important, we need to balance that with all of the other aspects. So if not now, then when? That's why we're doing this, and that's why we are determined to get to a solution. So with that, I'm going to check out what we have posted so far for questions. If you haven't had an opportunity to put your questions in the chat, please do that now. And we will begin asking those. Let's see what we got. Okay, so I think this is something that's come up a lot already in our conversations with the task force, and I think we're seeing it come up in the questions tonight. So Mark, I know when we've talked to you in the past, you've told us about the challenges that Long has had first with Fairpoint and now it's Consolidated regarding service. You mentioned people not being able to get a DSL hookup for months, etc. So out here, people's experience with Consolidated is that it hasn't been good. They don't feel the service is good. Obviously, the DSL is horrible when people are trying to, do anything online. But just that piece about, we have Consolidated offers really bad customer service. They offer really poor internet. So were you getting a lot of that as well? And how are you managing to, I don't say combat that, or is Consolidated stepping up and acknowledging those things? And how are they planning to sort of build people's trust when people don't really care for them to begin with?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't have a great answer for it other than we're looking forward, not back. The whole DSL lack of hookups right now is a relatively new phenomena, pretty much since the pandemic started. And this is not just Long Island. I mean, their technicians have to work differently in separate vehicles, and people want service, and every upgrade takes a person showing up to do it. So I think they're just stretched so thin so fast, with the current situation. So far as, I haven't heard a lot. I know it's there. So far as, customer service, I mean, they've made it, it could never be as bad as it was in the 5 years after they moved from Verizon to Fairpoint. So that's all I can say. I know it's still a problem, and so far as okay, so here we are 1 year later, I hope, meeting with you on our new fiber system. I mean, it should be simpler. It's not 100-year-old cable or copper connections up on these waving old phone poles. The maintenance and stuff, which is just constant for our two guys that come out here, it hopefully will be reduced. I mean, it's all we can hope for. I don't know if I hit that very well.
Yeah, definitely. No, I mean, I think a lot of it that's good. It's like an unknown. And one of the things I like what you say about, looking forward and you're not looking back. I think one of the things that it is oftentimes, especially when we started having the thought of the public-private partnership with an incumbent was, what is the current infrastructure? And I know some of us were thinking, oh, well, we don't want that infrastructure. So do you have a sense of, I know that what Consolidated is doing is coming in and building an entirely new infrastructure. This is not a build out further of what's there. It's other than the poles, I'm assuming it's all new. And does that help shift people's thinking that it's a different animal altogether?
For those that have carefully read our many publications over the years, the toughest thing about setting up your own system is the poles. You know what Islesboro went through. How many poles did they have to replace? Are you kidding me? You had to pay to replace their poles before they could hang 2 pounds of fiber up on it. And then you have monthly rental fees for these poles. I mean, that's a huge part of, setting up your own system. With this deal, wait a minute, CCI already is on the poles. Well, there's no talk in our contract about make ready. They're not going to make one pole ready because the poles don't need making ready. I don't want to talk out of turn, but that was just craziness what Islesboro went through, and we were faced with going through too. So look, I'm not trying to sell you guys anything, but there's certainly something to be said with partnering, I hate to say with someone like CCI, but they already have the pole rights. that's a big chunk of change. For Long Island, I don't know where what you have for cables or what there. We actually had a phone cable laid from Peaks Island about, I don't know, 18, 20 years ago. And for some strange reason, it included some fiber. Well, hello. So we have, that's CCIs. That's big. So we're not into dishes and antennas to city center and, you know, all of that cost either. So partnering is not bad cost-wise.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question that somebody asked in the chat. How many households and line miles?
You guys are the big city. Yeah, I mean, we're tiny. About 350 camps, cottages, castles, and homes, and
Yeah.
about 12 miles of road. I'm not sure
Okay.
where they got that from, but that's what your estimate's going to be based on. And the engineers and CCI, I mean, they know every pole that's on the island, and you know, they'll figure it pretty close.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean,
going along with, I mean, of course, like, you know, the build out price tag, everyone wants to know, but at the end of the day, you know, what people really want to know is, well, how much am I paying for service? And you had talked about the options that you were presented, and it would be great to just look at those one more time in context. Some folks are wondering, you know, what is included in that? Is phone included in that? And then you mentioned, you know, the option of bundling if folks want additional, I want to say TV because that's not the right word, but so
No.
can you give us a sense of like, okay, if I'm paying for the 50 over 50, am I getting my phone? Like what am I getting with that?
No, but you can bundle. So 50 over 50, the price I have here without the surcharge is $63 plus tax, to be a couple dollars. So, I mean, an internet phone costs $45 a year. You know, what's that? $3 a month. The CCI TV, I don't want to get too deep into packages here, but I knew someone was going to ask about that. We're cabbage salad of paperwork here. Well, let's see how many channels you can get. There you go. Some prices we have here, CCI TV basic, $24.99, 30 plus HD channels and local channels. See standard $32.99. It's 105 channels plus locals. And it also includes some recording capacity. So it's very competitive. You know, with this, whatever you get from satellite or from, you guys have some cable there, you know, you get the same stuff here. But again, I haven't had my satellite for a couple of years. So these prices look, again, I'm not trying to sell you anything, but the prices look attractive, and it is their intention that they be attractive. I mean,
Yeah.
If I mean, my argument back here to CCI is, hey, if we don't quite make it on the subscriber fee monthly payment here, you only got to sell a couple of these TV packages to be way ahead of the game. I don't know if they bought that or not, but anyway, yeah. So
Okay.
I rambled a bit there, but
No, hopefully that answers folks' questions regarding that. And I mean, so we're getting some questions too. You know, we've talked about this. This is not an apples to apples. We're much larger. You know, we've got way more miles of roads than Long does, and many more hookups and households. But a question coming in for the question is sort of regarding the backbone. So will folks have to, so the backbone will be built and the backbone will exist. Consolidated is going to do a hookup to the home. Will it automatically do a hookup to the home, or will you have to be a subscriber and then they'll do a hookup to the home, and they need to hook up, and of course they would want to hook up anyone that wants service.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So
the hookup is free, at least initially, and it includes a box. It includes right into the house within reason. if they can snake, if people have buried, if they can snake through, you know, they'll pull the old phone line through and pull the new cable through. So they will attempt within reason to hook you up for free within, I think it's 150 feet of a pole. Maybe it's 100, but I think it's 150 feet. I'd have to check that. But yeah, they're attempting to do no cost hookup if you sign up now.
And I remember reading something in the documents from your broadband committee of what it would cost past the 150 feet. Do you recall what that?
It's like 50 cents a foot or something, you know,
Okay.
very modest, very modest.
Okay.
I don't remember the number. But
Okay, so folks who, you know, maybe have like super long driveways or something like that, they might be paying more for a hookup than,
right.
okay.
Well, they're paying more than free. So
They're paying more than free, yes.
for, you know, and there are some crazy situations here, like I'm sure you have even more of them there. I mean, if you got if you have electricity to your home, you probably have a pole pretty close unless you've done some crazy underground thing from halfway across the island.
Right. Okay, great. So I'm trying to glean from our question bank here some questions that are directly related to long. There's a question about, and this is, I think, more related to um, the task force than it is to Long Island, but we know that you guys are paying, you know, over $500,000, whereas, you know, for us, we have a estimate of approximately $4 million project to serve our whole island. So again, this is really because of just the size of the project. We're entirely different. So the question was really, why is the CCI quote for Long much lower than ours? Well,
Because a tour of Long Island I'd give you would be a lot shorter than what would give me a Vinyl Haven.
it's a short tour, exactly.
It's smaller
Exactly.
and fewer hookups.
I've been there. I know the size of Vinyl Haven. It's beautiful and big.
So Mark, you had mentioned earlier, people were saying, well, maybe we should, I don't know if they said we should wait for 5G, but what about 5G? Has anybody on your island talked about the SpaceX Starlink program, or has that come up in terms of folks saying that that might be a better option for us? Or do you think people might go with that service over?
Well, you know, there's some expense to, I don't know the details of that, other than, you know, everybody's aware something like that is happening. You know, everything's got an expense to it. Getting that signal to your house and having, you know, whatever cost there is. And at least our studies, any satellite, like I said earlier, is going to have, you know, latent delays.
Oh, yeah.
Back and forth, probably data caps and who knows what else. It may be perfect for someone. We got a couple of small islands off Long Island that have, you know, one's ripple effects and one's got a cottage on it. Yeah, we ain't running any fiber over there. I haven't told them that yet, but you know, maybe the satellite will look good to them. So
yeah, I think it was definitely covered in the report that Mark Olet did for us, and just talking about, you know, like, yes, satellite is out there, and you know, it may be coming and it may be an option for some folks, but it's not considered like a solution or the solution. So I'm gonna probably jump to a couple questions that are more related to Vinyl Haven. And I know that there are a couple members of the committee on. I see Pat McCormick has joined us. Hi, Pat. And of course, Janann is with us. And so if I'll do my best to answer some of these questions, but it might be great if you guys would jump in as well. So one of the questions we have is about just our pole situation. I'll take a stab at answering this, and then if you guys have something to add, please jump in. So when we did the broadband report, Mark Alette did sort of a rough assessment of the polls. It was, due to COVID that an engineer did not come out and do an actual, I don't say study, but sort of a high level look at the condition of the polls. The thing with the polls is that Consolidated owns, and correct me, Broadband Task Force, if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that Consolidated owns a majority of the poles out here. And that on the poles, we have Fox Island Electric, Consolidated, and Spectrum. Spectrum would be leasing space on the poles. If the town were to have its own network, it would need to lease space on the poles. We don't know, there's an estimate in the report of approximately, how many poles might need to be replaced of the existing poles, and that replacement would have to do with the fact that the poles weren't high enough to accommodate another line, and they might not be in the condition to accommodate another line. Is that the understanding that you all have? Broadband Task Force folks?
I think that's right. So we're not talking about all the polls, and we're going to have to take a closer look, and it will depend where. And I don't think it's, we don't want to consider it trivial, but it's certainly not the biggest barrier. And, as we've talked about, pole attachments in general, whether there's room on the pole or not, is often what increases costs, including time and everything else, to these sorts of projects everywhere in America. And Maine has had some reform around pole attachment fees and processes, but it is tricky, as was the case in Islesboro and elsewhere. And it would be something, to tackle in itself.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. And Mark, go ahead. Yep.
It's funny, you're correct, Patrick, in that Maine has had some reform. I brought that up at a broadband meeting at one of our island coalition last year, and Andy Trout said, yeah, that's right. The pole attachment fees are either gone or going or something like that. He said, but Consolidated is waiting for the first town to try and do it, and they're going to challenge it. So you might want to follow up on that a little bit. We
Yes.
found it for our size project, the Axiom, study that was done, that it was a big chunk of change. I'm going to say, I don't remember. I don't want to give a number, but it was a lot.
Yeah, and I think, we see that obviously in our report and in the cost estimates that we have. I think to Pat's point, it's not an insurmountable obstacle, but one of the things is that it's still sort of what we have in the report is very high level. So if we are going down the road of owning our own system, the next step is to do essentially what would be a make-ready study, almost sort of slightly in advance of actually, committing to the project. So we would get an engineer to come out and do an actual study of all the poles. So we would know how many poles need to be replaced, what that actual make-ready cost would be. So we haven't committed to doing that yet, but we've talked about that being a next step. Janann?
Yeah, one of the things that we were talking about, the make-ready costs, we had this discussion with Mark at Axiom. Recent state law has made it to where a municipally owned system is not having to pay for make ready for the polls. That is waived if it is a wholly municipally owned system. So that's one chunk of money in favor of doing it yourself.
And to Mark's point of Consolidated saying, or thinking Consolidated is waiting for a municipality to go ahead and try it, we'd be a good candidate. Yeah, we'd be a good candidate since they own the majority of our polls. So
well, let me know how that works out. But check Andy Trout on that. I think that's where I got that information.
Yeah, no, it's true. We have it in our report, and in fact, some of the we go from a worst case scenario for total cost to like best case scenario, and best case is those fees are waived. So we have that in our best case scenario estimate. I wanted to just address a question that has come up. It's come up in our past conversations, our past conversation. And I know that both Janann and Pat were with me and Andy Dorr and Kendra Jo Grindle in a recent conversation that we had with the members of the board and CEO and general office manager of Fox Island Electric Cooperative. And that has been a question that has come up, which is where do we stand in, I don't want to say partnering, but working with Fox Island Electric Cooperative. And also, so that's sort of one question. And adding to that would be the benefit of our own system on the island. Would that be a benefit in terms of, bringing jobs, providing, essentially providing livelihood for folks out here? I think they're sort of combined, because we have thought about in terms of the co-op, working with the co-op as, oh, this would be another job for someone working with the co-op. So that was a lot of information, less of a question. I'm going to take a stab at answering the first part, which is where do we stand with Fox Island Electric Cooperative? And then I'm going to put it back to Pat and Janann to fill in that and maybe address the jobs piece. So we have been in conversation with Fox Island Electric Cooperative since, I'm going to say, a year ago. And where things stand with Fox I is that they are very willing to, pending board approval, enter into a business arrangement with the town to lease space on poles and to lease fiber from undersea cables. Beyond that, they don't have the current capacity to provide additional services. And that includes any level of partnering with the town for this project. So that's my understanding. And if Janann and Pat have any, if you guys want to pick it up from there and maybe address the jobs piece. And I'm cognizant of the time, it's 12 past. So we'll probably just address this in a minute or two and then wrap up.
Yeah, I think I can cover it pretty quickly. Much of the problem stems from the nonprofit status of the Fox Island Electric. Because they are a nonprofit, they are not allowed to make money on anything else but providing electricity, except for about 15%. In other words, 85% of their income has to come from their provision of electricity. So there'd be a little bit of wiggle room there to maybe lease a fiber or some small thing like that from them, but they can't make money. We can't swoop in here and give them a bunch of money to run this broadband and hire new people and all the rest of it. That's just, in order to do that, they would lose their nonprofit status. So it's just a non-starter as far as they're concerned.
Pat, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think, there's the structural issue that Janann mentions. I think there are other rural communities that have addressed that in different ways. Of course, here it is complicated by, they already have revenue from wind that's separate from electricity as a retail provider. So that's part of it. I think also they made it clear they have a lot of work and priorities. I think some of us thought the idea of more jobs within the co-op to support such a thing would be a good fit, in part because I will say the vast majority of successful rural municipal broadband projects have involved an electrical co-op. But anyway, they've made it clear, and they have their reasons. I think they've been very open and transparent with us, and there are risks involved. The advantages are the fact that they have bucket trucks and billing systems and all that. But I think there are other ways to go about it, and now we have some clarity why they're, you know, they're not interested in like Gabe and Janann said, in a real partnership or a big chunk of this, even if risks and that sort of thing were addressed. So I think we're back to looking at other ways to make it work.
Thanks so much, Pat. I'm recognizing we're at our time. I don't see anyone on the phone this evening, but I just wanted to give anybody who's joining us a chance to ask a question if you didn't get a chance to put a question in the chat. And if there's anybody present who would like to ask something, if you want to come onto video and audio, you can do that. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. So Mark, I just wanted to thank you for joining us. And I'm gonna put your email. I hope you don't mind people emailing you or reaching out. But if anybody has questions for Janann, myself, and I would encourage you, especially around the Fox Island Electric Cooperative questions, please reach out to us directly. We'll do our best to share more information with you about that relationship. If you have questions for Mark regarding whatever, Long's experience with CCI, or maybe you want to take a trip out to Long Island, Mark, you willing to host a picnic? Or, well, maybe not right now, but
Yeah, it's a little touchy right now.
maybe next year. So anyway, emails are up on the screen, and I just want to thank everybody for joining us. And we hope that you will join us next Wednesday at 6 p.m. We're going to be talking with Roger Heinen of Islesboro about what their solution to providing universal broadband to their island was or is, and how that is working out. So 6 p.m. January 27th, and we'll be putting out the registration and invite through all the channels we normally do. So thank you, everybody. We really appreciate you joining us and hope that you have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.